Also, in terms of changing perception, and also I think you mentioned Francis. I think he was with this next person I want to talk about, the son of Sam. Uh, there's all new theories about him, and you mentioned something about right? It was son of Sam. Where are you with that whole story? Because it seems to be all over the place lately.
Yeah, so basically, I'm going to be referencing in this the Netflix multi-part documentary Sons of Sam
Hmm.
and the research behind that. And some of this is more, this is, I'll just say this is more controversial than the Menendez brothers.
Okay.
So, there's wide varying opinion about what I'm about to get into, but
Yeah.
this is sort of the way that this theory has emerged. So originally, when these murders took place, and by the way, people who don't know, remember, we're talking about 1970s New York. There were these random shootings that basically terrified the city. They called it Summer of Sam, in fact,
Hmm.
because it seemed to be just totally random shootings of people in their cars, often like younger people making out, stuff like that, right? And the perpetrator or perpetrators of this started sending letters taunting the cops and the media. And they made references to, we are the sons of Sam, et cetera, right? So, long story short, finally, someone is arrested. His name is David Berkowitz. He was a postal worker. They arrested him. They found him because he had gotten a parking ticket at the same time that he had stopped somewhere to murder some people. And so they were able to basically trace him through this parking ticket and arrested him. And he took full responsibility publicly. He took responsibility, claimed insanity, right, but
Right.
took responsibility for the murders. And so it was assumed to be like case closed. But there was this one reporter named Maury Terry, and Maury Terry he's dead now. He is very controversial, and I do think he went too far at times with this thing that would turn into an obsession for him. But I do think he was onto something. Maury Terry found evidence that, in fact, these murders were not just the sole doing of Berkowitz, but in fact, Berkowitz was a member of an underground cult in New York, and it was a satanic cult, and that this cult was carrying out these murders together. So, in other
Right.
words, there'd be different perpetrators. And the evidence that Maury Terry had for that is that David Berkowitz lived next to a man named Sam who had a dog. And so it was then widely claimed that the barking dog, had driven Berkowitz crazy, and Berkowitz even said something to that effect that the dog told him to commit murders and
Yeah.
so forth, right? And so people knew, a lot of people know about this. Oh, his neighbor was Sam, and Sam had a dog. What a lot of people don't know, though, and Maury Terry uncovered this, is that this Sam guy, Berkowitz's neighbor, had two sons, and these sons, there's it seems to be testimony and evidence indicating that these sons were not only good friends of Berkowitz, but that they were involved in this underground group in the 70s, and that they might have been committing these murders as well. And there are references in the Son of Sam letters to the sons of Sam. And at one point, there's a reference to Wheaties. And apparently, one of these sons of Sam, his nickname was Wheaties. His
Hmm.
name was John Wheat Carr,
Hmm.
and his nickname was Wheaties. That's what he was sort of known by everyone. And also in the letter, there are references to Father Sam. Father Sam beats us. He puts us in the closet and all this. So what this
Wow.
investigator, journalist Maury Terry, found was that there were all of these connections between Berkowitz and actual sons of Sam
Oh,
who
wow.
wrote things in these letters that seemed to correspond very closely with their lives. And so seemed to be at least an interesting theory, and the police were totally uninterested in pursuing it because for them it was case closed. The public had been on the police's back for months to solve this murder, and so they
Yeah.
were getting a ton of heat.
Yep.
And so what happened is when they found Berkowitz, they wanted a case closed because it's a much neater package for them than to say, oh, well, there are still people out there, we need to keep investigating. No, they just wanted it shut.
Yeah.
And so the police were completely resistant to looking into this. Eventually, Maury Terry did find a prosecutor who was willing to look into it, reopen the case, and it basically was inconclusive.
Hmm.
But then what Maury Terry discovered is that Berkowitz and these sons of Sam also had links to a satanic group in North Dakota that was linked to a murder of a Stanford student from North Dakota who was murdered in the Stanford chapel. She and a candle was inserted in her genitals, and it was like very sort of theatrical, almost satanic looking.
Right.
And so people will have to look into it themselves, look at the Netflix documentary. But basically, there seems that there are many indications that Berkowitz did not act alone, and that at the time, there actually was a network of people who were into this weird satanic alternative lifestyle stuff, and it might have gotten a little out of control. Whoa. Now, I understand that there are a lot of people who find a narrative like this ridiculous because they'll say, "Oh, satanic panic! Look, it's just more of the satanic panic." And oh yeah, it's like in the '80s when people thought that people, were worshiping Satan at daycare centers and molesting kids, and it's all bullshit. But this is what I want to say, and the documentary goes into this, is that actually in the 70s, there was a great deal of public interest and celebrity interest in Satanism. It was considered cool in the 70s. It was counterculture coming off of the 60s. Even like the Rolling Stones and some of these bands had satanic imagery, in their
Sympathy for
stuff.
The devil. Yeah.
And so people were really interested in the 70s. And there were some people who were really interested in this sort of alternative lifestyle built around Satanism and the dark side and the occult. And I don't think that it's too crazy to believe that it might have gotten a little out of hand at some points for some of the people and the individuals in these groups. And let me just add that these two brothers that I'm talking about who might have been involved in this cult, within 2 years of Berkowitz's arrest, they both died in weird circumstances. One of them committed suicide, but there were extenuating circumstances to that made the local police skeptical about it. And then the other had a fatal accident, a single car accident, where it looks like he was probably run off the road or just smashed into something. But it's like both of these brothers, within 2 years, they die. Now, later on, this journalist, Maury Terry, would actually land an interview with David Berkowitz, and Berkowitz would admit in this interview that there were other people involved. And so, and you can see in the interview, Berkowitz is uncomfortable talking about it. He doesn't really want to, but Berkowitz in that interview said that, yes, I did not act alone. There were other people involved. He corroborated a number of Maury's assertions. And so I think at the very least, who really cares now? It was a long time ago, but I think at the very least, it's an interesting story about a case where it might not be quite as open and shut as history and the police would have us believe. And so there's still a lot of people who believe that there was a network involved.
Well, we've had the great BX on this show, and she investigates satanic cults that are happening right now.
Oh, really?
She's got insane stories that, they operate, a lot of them operate online. I want to say also there's satanic cults, but it also might be that they are accelerationists posing as satanic cults to accelerate, the demise of culture. But they promote crazy violence and self-harm, pet mutilation. And there have been some in the army who've been caught, and they're, just people in different blogs and chat rooms around the world doing these crazy things. And then I also want to say, for those who don't know, New York City in the 70s, during the Summer of Sam, it was an insane place. It was a bankrupt city. My grandfather was a cop there during Summer of Sam. So, all that's going on. There was a heightened paranoia in the city. On my dad's side, all the Irish family members were firefighters, and the city was literally on fire all the time. So you have the city always burning. It's literally bankrupt. You have this supposed son of Sam running around. But, on top of all that, there is just insane, ghastly murder happening. I actually have a newspaper clipping of my grandfather arresting the man they called Mad Dog, who, and forgive me for those listening, this is a horrible thing, but this is what happened. That same summer, this guy, Mad Dog, stabbed this young girl like 200 times and left her body in this courtyard. And I have the clipping of my grandfather leading him out to the cop car. And on the other side is Summer of Sam. They still haven't caught him yet. So maybe it could be that the police are just wanting to button up the evil and be like, it's just this one guy and we can move on from now. Well, clearly, in the picture I just painted, it's more than just that. But then looking at the Berkowitz thing in particular, it's interesting that it might not just be him, and I wonder if it was just the police being like, we got to just have a guy and say that's it and quell this unrest, this paranoia, or if they knew something else and they're trying to, let other people operate. Because I do think, that's why I brought up BX. there is a satanic issue going on and has been going on well before the 70s. This is a long thing that's been going on, and they could be in the office. I'm just speculating right now. They could be in places of power. They could be cops, trying to keep people safe, who are in power. And coming from New York, we've had judges up there who've been arrested in the past 5 years for selling children into slavery in upstate New York. So there's all types of very strange things. It's not just a New York thing. And then on top of all that, there was also, maybe this was in the documentary you watched, there was a garden that these people would meet at, some type of cult in New York that they say Berkowitz might have been a part of, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's and I'm blanking on the name, but yes,
I know,
near
me too.
his house and near these the Sons of Sam's home, there was this garden, and apparently there was an abandoned pump house underneath it, and this is where people would meet. And I just want people to understand too, like, apart from Maury Terry's allegations, there had been reports in the news and police investigations of disturbing stuff going on in and around this park. And they had found, and this, you can go back and you can look at news clippings here, they had found bodies of like 100 dogs, German shepherds in particular, that had appeared to have been slain. And there were reports of people in hoods and robes meeting at this place regularly by candlelight.
Yes.
And I understand, again, this sounds like something of a fanciful imagination, but human beings, there are a variety of human beings in this world, and people are into all kinds of shit. And again, in the 70s, this was chic. It was interesting. It was something that even celebrities were getting into, the occult. And it was much more, the 70s, as you know, were much more of a sort of alternative lifestyle era for our society and our country. And so I just don't think that it's crazy to imagine that you would have some people who would get a little too far into this. And then, like you said, you would have an accelerationist that would then take it to the next level. And in fact, that's what Maury Terry has basically described, and Berkowitz has basically described. And something else that's very strange about the Berkowitz killings is that you had numerous eyewitnesses to these killings, and they would describe to the composite sketchers, they would describe vastly different appearances to these guys. And so if you look at these composite sketches that were done after each crime, sometimes they're tall, sometimes they're short, sometimes they have curly hair, sometimes it's straight. And so it's like, it's really hard to believe that all of these disparate images could be this Berkowitz guy. In fact, when you look at pictures of, for instance, the Carr brothers, you find that they correspond very well to some of these sketches that were done after the crime. So again, I understand a lot of this is circumstantial, and no one is claiming at this point, this many years later, I think that the police need to reopen the investigation again. But it is a really interesting, I think, idea that these murders might have been the result of more than one person.
Also, and I know you know about this is post Manson, right? So, and not too far after Charles Manson, too long after Charles Manson.
Zodiac,
and Zodiac. So, the Manson thing, they wanted a guy. They needed a face, right? Here
comes the mind control.
And, I'm just saying, there was a dog sending psychic messages, but I am just saying, the authorities and the media love to have just one boogeyman. When, if you look into the Charles, we both love the book Chaos by Tom O'Neill. It's so much more complex than just one boogeyman. There's a lot of boogeymen.
Well, also like the Long Island serial killer.
Like the Long Island serial killer, I'm still skeptical just being that one guy. I don't know. It remains to be seen clearly. When it comes to Berkowitz, do you buy the born again narrative that he's got now?
I do, actually. One thing that he has been very consistent in over the decades since his incarceration is that he takes full responsibility for this. And in fact, he's been uncomfortable with confirming Maury Terry's theories because he says, look, I did kill some people. I am culpable. I should be here. He's not trying to get out of prison. He has apparently been a model prisoner himself for years and years. And again, he's remained very consistent and I would say cheerful about his Christian faith. So I think that this is someone who has been spiritually, however you want to put it, redeemed during his incarceration, and good for him.
That's good. Yeah, it was hard for me to really tell. It's hard to tell because when you read or when you watch the Bundy videos right before
I don't think that guy.
He's claiming to
I
be
don't
born
think he
again
was
as
a
well.
being.
But that guy is, he was such a mad genius, like an evil genius. It was anytime he opened his mouth, I'm like, this guy's he's so charming and also great at lying. But I got a different vibe from Berkowitz when I saw Francis talk to him in prison, which is a great interview for those who haven't seen it. So before we get, you and I talked about like synchronicities and stuff before we went live, and I want to get into those. But this is a question that is an intersection of pop culture and Satanism. Is Taylor Swift the daughter of Anton LaVey? Or how does this work? What's that theory?
I haven't heard that theory.
Oh, you haven't heard
Is
that
what's
one?
going around?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe it's the granddaughter. Do you remember? Someone told us that. If you look it up, it's on Google, so it must be true. I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. At this point, I'm just hoping that society finally gets sick of her. I'm just tired of hearing about her, not from you, but just in general.
Oh yeah, no, me too. I'm sick of hearing her too. I think she's terrible. Nothing I like about her. Are you a fan? Are you a Swiftie?
I'm not a Swiftie. Chris is a Swiftie. I'm not. I mean, but I don't mind her.
I don't mind her either. I'm just annoyed with hearing. I'm annoyed with the coupledom too. I just think he's a big oaf. I'm sorry. Yeah. And so I find nothing about him intriguing. I find nothing about her intriguing. I'm completely unintrigued.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. They're very boring to me. Nothing fun about them. And manufactured.